Hi, my name is Mohammed Mutassim. In this video, I will share with you the game that I have created. A quick overview. I'll be talking about my code and my thought process in doing it, how the program works, from user interface to error handling and data validation. And lastly, I'll end the video with a demonstration of how the game works. I have few requirements to meet: input and data, and to display the data. I also need list and file processing, if statements, relational and logic operators, and loops, and finally a user-defined function. To start off, I import a random module from random library. I also need to declare a boolean value and call it a play game. And also I need two more values called play score and computer score. I need to display the board, so I declared a function called print board, and that takes board as a argument. Well, here's the board is a list that is a two-dimensional list. Once this function is called, it will display the board. Now, for winning scenarios, there is three functions that I've used: check row, check column, and check diagonals. The check row and check columns are dynamic. That means I need a for loop to iterate through the rows and through the columns to check it. So I created a function called check winner to iterate through it and check, as well as check if there is a diagonal win. Now, sometimes you can't win, sometimes you can't lose. It's just a tie. Here, I created a function called check tie that takes in board as a parameter and has a for loop that iterates through it and then checks if there is an empty spot. Now, for the human player, this function uh, prompts the user to input the row and inputs the column. And then afterwards, there's an if statement to do an error validation to make sure that the player inputs the required input. The required input is a list of 1, 2, and 3. And then I also added a human log list for later used in the log. And for the computer move, it is a function that has nested loops inside it. These nested loops will iterate through the board argument to check if there is an empty spot. If there is, it will append that empty spot into a possible moves list, and then later on, we will pick a random spot for a move. And then I also called computer log for I also created computer log to use it later on for logging. Okay, for log info, I created this function called log info that takes in move data as a parameter and then has a for loop that iterates through the move data to separate it. And then once it separates it, it takes in the loop value and to check if it's a human player or a computer player. Human player is the even number, computer player isn't, and then it takes this value. But first, I need to open the file. I need to open a text file, and then afterwards, I will update the text file, and then I will close the file. Now, for the main function, I created a board that is, remember the board? It's a two-dimensional list, and I also declared a main log and a players list. This players list chooses between X and O, and turn. Turn chooses between two players. Now here's a while loop. I used a while loop to check if it's a tie or if it isn't. If it's a tie, then the game will stop, and if it's not a tie, the game will continue. Now this section will talk about whose turn it is, if it's a human turn or if it's the player turn. It all depends on the turn value. Now for this section, I talk about check winner. The check winners function will check if who has won, and after it checks who has won, it checks if someone has won and then who has won, using if statements. And if it's the player's turn, then the player has won. If it isn't, it's the computer. Lastly, I created a while loop to play the game. There is at the start of the game, it will ask if the player wants to start the game, and then if he answers y, which means yes, then it will call the function main, and if he says no, then it will break the loop. Lastly, here's an example for the log file. Let's start off our video demonstration section. Here it is. It's asking me if I want to play. Yes. Okay, let me choose a row. Let me choose a column. Okay, let me choose another row. Let me choose another column. Okay, third row, third column, and bam, I've won against the computer. Here's a demonstration on the log file and how it looks. Recommendation section. Let's run the code. Okay, let's try 9. Okay, so row works. Let's try maybe a string. So let's try chicken. Okay, it works.